Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel and to another live stream. It's been a while since we've done a live stream, so I was thinking we're overdue for a live stream and I'm overdue to reconnect with the Droogies, so here we are. And a lot's happened since the last live stream, and I know that the last few live streams that I've been doing on the channel have actually been a lot of political kind of live streams, which is fine. I like politics, everybody likes politics, and politics just gets in the way of daily life. But we've done a few political live streams, so I was saying, okay, let's just steer a little bit away from that. Let's go back to something like martial arts related. And there's been a lot of martial arts stuff happening in my life recently, and a lot has been happening in my life recently. So some stuff I want to kind of like get off my chest. I'm using this as a bit of a catharsis, but then my whole channel came around as a catharsis. And for people who regularly know my channel, like regular viewers, regular subscribers, I've said numerous times in various different capacities that actually the whole YouTube channel that I have started out as something to help with my mental health. I was going through a very, very rough patch back in 2020. A lot of things were going on in my life. A lot of it not so good. And the channel kind of came out of that. Take a break from work and create something which has now become the channel. But at the time, that wasn't the original intent. But that's going back to the past. We're talking about the present. We're going to be practicing our mindfulness today, and part of mindfulness is actually being involved in the present. We tend to look at the past with regret. We tend to look at the future with anxiety. The only real moment that we're living in is the present. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today, just being in the moment, being in the present. Of course, that being said, a lot of us being in the present now kind of like will involve going back and looking a little bit at the past, but just give it some context to explain where things are now. So yes, a lot has happened, personal life and martial arts related. So to start with, let's focus on the martial arts. So where am I at with martial arts training? And there was a stage in my life actually where I just wanted to jet martial arts in. I did Taekwondo for so long. Taekwondo is my base style, and I was having a discussion with somebody today, strangely enough, about martial arts, and got talking about Taekwondo and saying that yes, Taekwondo is my base style, but from there I branched off into different other martial arts as well. It got to a stage with my own self-reflection and my own self-actualization, and I realized actually martial arts was not something I particularly enjoyed doing anymore, which may sound a bit oxymoronic, a bit strange, because martial arts has been such a huge part of my life. So how could I come to this revelation of saying, okay, I don't actually like doing martial arts? How can I just say that? It's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. So what happened? Did I just wake up one day and say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore? No. A lot of it was a build-up. So I got itchy eye. A lot of it was a build-up over time. And again, we still want to be in the present, but I'll just say this just to kind of give some context. But when I was doing my Taekwondo, the practice I was receiving in hindsight was very abusive. It was an abusive school. The instructor, I don't feel, had my best interests at heart. And to all intents and purposes, I feel as though he was using me. And when I only came to this realization actually quite recently during my own therapy sessions. And when I came to realization, actually, I felt as though I was being abused, my love for martial arts just dropped. So steadily, my enthusiasm for martial arts went. I didn't train as much. I was aware I wasn't training as much, but to me, I actually didn't care. Whereas many years ago, if I'd been like, right, I haven't trained for a whole week, I would be literally like on withdrawal symptoms. I would be feeling, my God, what the hell's going on? I haven't been training for a week. That's just incomprehensible. I couldn't get my head around that. It was like, no, training is part of life. But in these years, the last few years, it's like if I don't go training, I don't go training. I don't give a shit. I still got the energy. I mean, I've still For somebody who's 38, I have probably the fitness level of somebody who's 10 years younger, I'd say, generally speaking. I look at other people who are 38 and I look at them, I'm like, my God, you're so unfit. And they've got like pot bellies and everything like this. And yeah, sure, I don't want to like judge somebody else's journey. But to me, no. I mean, even though the martial arts training dropped off significantly, I was still very much keeping in shape. I was still going regular runs. I was still doing skipping, using the skipping ropes and what have you. So I was still keeping myself in shape. And every single day I do 20 press ups, I do like 30 odd squats, and I do another 30 whatever, like abdominal or leg muscle. So I still keep myself in shape. That is not martial arts related training. It's just my personal fitness training. So the martial arts took a backseat to that. So moving away from Sussex, I said to myself that was going to be a good full stop. And I wanted martial arts to be a thing of my past. I mean, I was so disillusioned with martial arts. I was fed up with martial arts, hated the establishment I was with that abused me during my early years of training, child abuse, essentially, which really fed into my trauma. And I have PTSD partly as a result of the abuse I received learning as a youngster and being abused when I was a minor by an instructor. That I thought, you know what, fuck martial arts. When I move, I'm not going to take martial arts with me. Martial arts are going to stay in Sussex, and I'm going to take a new self forward, or I'm going to make a new self when I get to, you know, the West Country. May have noticed the psychology there. Looking back in the past, it's a lot of regret. Looking into the future, there's a lot of anxiety, and that's kind of what I was feeling at that time. I was not mindful of the moment. Coming to the West Country, strangely enough, though, I looked at myself and I was like, you can't. I was being realistic. I had to real self-reflect, and I was like, you cannot take martial arts out of your life. No, you've had a shit upbringing with martial arts. You've been abused by a certain instructor. You have withered so many storms for martial arts. I've sparred in competitions where I've literally bled. Somebody busted up my nose and blood went everywhere. I've sweat, literally must have been gallons of pints of sweat to get where I am. I've been all over, you know, Europe, Asia, America, Africa to train. I've done some amazing things with martial arts, and I looked at myself, and that's not me blowing my own trumpet. That's just me looking at my martial arts resume and actually saying, yeah, I'm actually quite impressed with what I've done. Bearing in mind, I had very, very little support from systemic influences. So I said to myself, you do realize you may want to leave martial arts, but you know it's so ingrained in you that you're not going to be able to do it. You just have to come to that reality. And if you try to take martial arts completely out of your life, it's going to hurt, and it's going to probably cause some damage somewhere. Because again, the regret, looking back, I'll always be thinking, what could have been done differently? What could have been done better? Did I maybe quit martial arts? And if I did I quit martial arts on the martial arts terms, or did I quit it on my own terms? I know myself, and I know I'd have all these questions going around in my mind. There'll be more questions than answers. So I said to myself, fine, if I cannot quit martial arts, I want something to change. If I'm going to stay in martial arts, I can maybe work myself around to accepting that reality, but some things need to change in my martial arts outlook. I'm not going back to Taekwondo. I've done Taekwondo. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with Taekwondo, but at the same time, it was also one of the worst things that happened to me. I devoted so much time to that particular club that I was part of and got nothing back. It damaged my psychological outlook on various different things. I distrust leaders. I distrust anybody in management. I distrust people in power and authority, which I can stem back from the experiences I had at this school. Because this was the first experience I had with like real authority figures. And like I said, they abused it. I'm not going to overspam that term abuse, but they did. And it affected me negatively. It's like I now cannot trust anybody in authority, which is weird because in my day-to-day job, I am in a position of authority, which is ironic. How can I distrust people in authority if I'm an authority figure myself? But point being, I said, I'm not going back to Taekwondo. I'm done with Taekwondo. It was fun. It fulfilled a purpose. I did a lot of stuff with Taekwondo. It will always be my base style, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. And I'm not going back to Taekwondo. And I said to myself, if I am stuck with this martial arts gene inside of me, which I just cannot eradicate, or if I was to eradicate it, I'll be almost essentially killing part of myself in a way. Sounds dramatic, but that is kind of how I looked at it, I suppose. I said, what I could do is do another martial art, something completely different, something completely detached from Taekwondo, something which isn't Korean, something which isn't steeped in this pseudo bullshido kind of stuff. And Taekwondo, especially in the UK, Taekwondo is a bullshit machine, especially WT Taekwondo. Not going to mention certain names because that's defamation, but seriously, it's like I have met some people in the British WT Taekwondo establishment who are as corrupt as sin. They are child abusers. They are absolute narcissists. And I know people say narcissist and they bandy the word narcissist around quite easily these days, but these people I genuinely looked at and felt with my work in psychiatry and counseling, I can recognize a narcissist from 10 paces away. It's not a good skill to have. Well, it is, but at the same time, it's not. But point being, I can recognize people in British WT Taekwondo who are just generally not nice people, is essentially what I'm trying to say. And I don't want to go back to that. I'm done with that. I had the abuse from that. I've got so many T-shirts from doing that. I don't want to be part of that anymore. So I was like, no, I want to knock Taekwondo in the head. I'm done with Taekwondo. It kind of, Taekwondo left a scar on my heart, which will always be there as a reminder. And I can always fall back on the Taekwondo training I have, but I have no real compassion for Taekwondo. I had some Choi Kwang Do person on my channel. I get quite a lot of Choi Kwang Do people on my channel who try to insult me by dissing Taekwondo. And I look and think, you just don't get it, do you? I don't care. Taekwondo is a shit martial art. Taekwondo is a nice martial art. As a martial art itself, it is a nice martial art. But you're not going to be like a lean, green, mean killing machine on the streets using just Taekwondo. It's not designed for that. And Taekwondo has many holes, and especially British Taekwondo is so political. Back in 2013, tried to enter a World Taekwondo Championship. I was turned away literally like 5 minutes before setting on the map. And this is like months of training in advance. I paid for hotel, I paid for tournament fee, paid for everything. And I was literally in this giant arena in Coventry, this massive arena, literally about to go on the floor, and I was denied because I wasn't part of a certain organization within British Taekwondo, and they're like, yeah, you can't compete. I was livid. But that's how political it is. It's ugly. It really is an ugly world. And I'd say to people who are getting involved in British Taekwondo, just do your training and go home. Don't get involved in the politics, because it will burn you out. It will twist your mind. And that's, again, sounds very melodramatic, but the way the British Taekwondo establishment is set up, if they hook you in, they're going to really milk you, and they'll be vampires. And again, I could tell you my experiences in minute detail with dates, with years, venues, names of certain things which happened to me. But this isn't about that sort of trauma. Going back to the present, because again, not wanting to spend too much time looking at the past, because that is where regret is. Going into the future, there's the anxiety. There's that fear of the dark, because you're stepping into something you don't know, the dark. And we're scared of that. People are generally scared of change. But being mindful in the present, I said to myself, right, okay, down in West Country, fuck Taekwondo, fuck it good, fuck it over a barrel, and call me sweet buttery Jesus or whatever. What can I do as a martial art? And not only that, what can I do which is completely detached from Taekwondo? I was in like a little local supermarket and I saw this advert for Tai Chi. I have never given Tai Chi any time of day in my life. And that's not to say that I dislike Tai Chi. I have nothing against Tai Chi. I don't have anything against any martial art except Choi Kwang Do, and I'll actively say that. But Tai Chi, it's just something that just never really took my interest. But I saw this advert for Tai Chi, and it was this woman teaching it in the park. And she said, they're going to meet up every weekend, free of charge. Let's learn some Tai Chi. And I looked at this and thought, you know what? This park was literally like 10-minute walk from where I live. And I was, it's free. What have I got to lose? It's a chance to meet new people, engage in something new, fulfill that martial arts, I wouldn't say need, but that martial arts gene, perhaps, that condition, that martial arts condition, which is always inside me, and I don't think it's ever going to die, no matter how much I hate it. It's still going to be there. So maybe doing this Tai Chi will fulfill that need, and also maybe just open up other avenues for the future. I might look at things in a different way. I might feel different about certain things. So I said, what have I got to lose? So I went along, and this was like late January, early February, one of the two. And I've been to pretty much every single week since. I feel as though I'm learning a lot of new things. I mean, with Tai Chi itself, there's enough similarity to other martial arts I've done in terms of like stance work, for breathing. I have done like all the forms and stuff like that. I kind of recognize a little bit from that aspect, and it's familiar enough for me to relate to on those areas. But at the same time, it's different enough to take my interest, and it's different enough to hold my interest. And for somebody with undiagnosed ADHD, I find it, especially this day and age, I find the older I get, I find it very difficult to pay attention to certain things, which is something I've noticed in myself. Not quite sure what to do with that, to be honest. But yeah, this doing Tai Chi has held my interest. And when I first came away from my first lesson, I was like, you know what? I actually quite enjoyed that. I was like all over the place trying to do this form, because everybody at this place, they were quite middle-aged, elderly, nice people, but it's just not people I would, if it wasn't thanks for Tai Chi, I wouldn't engage with them. I wouldn't feel any reason to engage with them. Like, none of them are in my age range or anything like this. But they are nice people, and I found them very welcoming, and there was like no ego. And especially I feel that maybe at that age, you're not going to have ego. You're not going to have people there who are going to try and prove themselves or anything. And introduced myself to the teacher on the first lesson, and again, she naturally asked, do you have any martial arts upbringing? And I just basically said, I've had Taekwondo and I've had karate training, but I want to learn something new. And I do sometimes talk about my prior experiences with Taekwondo and karate in the Tai Chi lesson, but I'm very mindful that that's not what I'm there for. I'm not there to basically like narrate to them, I did this when I did Taekwondo, I did this when I did karate. It's no, I actually want to go there to learn Tai Chi. So, and that's fine. I mean, the form, I'm only just beginning to understand, like the part of the first part of this form, Laoja short form from yin style Tai Chi. And it's a very long form, but I like that because then it gives something to work on all the time. And I like the fact that I still don't know many of the techniques, because a lot of the techniques are very different to what I've learned from Taekwondo. And because they're different, it's interesting, it's challenging. It's really putting me outside of my comfort zone. And I like that from the martial arts perspective. And I feel that when I go next week, I will have stuff to learn. It won't be a case of, I've done this form so many times, it's boring now. I'll still be like, yes, I'm going to do this form. I'm going to try doing this form. I'm still wobbly on my feet. I'm still getting my hands in the wrong places. And, I still don't quite understand how to do eagle spread, crane spreads its wings, or what's the other we do? Golden rooster stands on one leg. And my favorite one is, was it Buddha's warrior pounds mortar? I've only just learned how to do that technique, and it's taken me like 4 months. But point being is that there's always something to learn, and I like that. And it's done in it's done in a relaxed way and at your own pace. There's no immediate pressure, which is so, again, detached from my upbringing of taekwondo, which was very sort of authoritarian and very militaristic. And myself coming from Brighton, I suppose I've been socially conditioned to expect things like now, 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 do it now. Whereas this approach, obviously the West Country approach, cultural in there as well, things, it's just more sort of like directly, it's more, you know, just take it your own time. You'll find your own zen, you'll find your own pace, you'll find your own fluidity. So I like that, I really do. And what I also like as well, I suppose, is the fact that, of course, I wouldn't say that anybody who trains at Tai Chi is my friend, because they're not, and that's no disrespect to them. They're nice people, as I said, but I just don't see them as people who I invite to the pub or share intimate moments with or stuff like that. I don't see them in that regard, but they're friendly enough, and I quite like that. I don't feel as though it needs to be anything more than that. So likewise, sometimes when I've actually gone for my runs, where I go to my run and I get to a checkpoint, I finish. It's on Bodmin Moor, and when I get to a checkpoint up there, I've actually started doing some of the Tai Chi from what I learned in the lesson, and I like that. It's kind of like a morning zen for me, which is nice. And then also a new experience yesterday. I went to something in Cornwall, just across the border, the foreign land of Cornwall. I went to something called the Trevavik Day, and I think I've pronounced that correctly. Somebody mentioned it to me today, actually, when I was trying to talk to them about it. They're like, no, you mispronounced it. But anyway, in Cornwall, deepest, darkest part of Cornwall, in a place called Camborne, which is right in like the narrowest part of Cornwall. They have this thing called Trevavik Day, and it's like a celebration of all Celtic culture and Cornish things, Cornish music, Cornish dance. They had like Cornish Morris dancers, learn Cornwall language, Cornwall independence movement, if you want to get political, all this kind of stuff. It was really cool. And they had this band, like an unsigned local band, playing in one of the pub gardens. And that was actually, I generally don't like those kind of bands. I found them a bit kitsch and a bit garagey. But actually, this band were pretty cool. So it was a really, really nice day. But also, as part of this Trevavik Day, they had a display of Cornish wrestling, or Cornuic wrestling, as they call it. And I have never tried Cornish wrestling. As a matter of fact, my grappling and ground experience from martial arts is very limited. I have done some grappling, but not enough to kind of win a sparring fight using grappling. So it was kind of new. And we got there, and I saw this Cornish wrestling display was set up, and there were these people doing, like, they're just little kids doing Cornish wrestling, and they were dressing these jackets and shorts and just throwing each other over their shoulders and stuff. A lot of it looked like judo. And I looked at this and said, okay, I'm going to watch this. But then part of the offer these Cornish wrestlers were doing was members of the public can have a go as well. And I was like, oh, I'm so tempted. And part of me was like, oh, you want to. And I saw this little kid get up, and she must be like 5 years old, and she went onto this big mat which these Cornish wrestlers had outside. And this was actually in a church-like graveyard where they're doing this, which was like really macabre. But the guys are really friendly, and they showed this girl how to do some certain rolls and throws and stuff like that, and she seemed to really enjoy it. So I went up there and I got talking to, I think it was like the head coach, and I just like asked him a few questions, like, what is Cornish wrestling? What distinguishes Cornish wrestling from other wrestling, and so on and so forth. And he was giving me a little bit of a history lesson, and he was saying like the differences of what makes it what it is. And he's saying like it's been an integral part of Cornwall with records dating back to like the 12th century. And unbeknownst to me, actually, that Jigoro Kano, the guy who made judo, apparently did like a bit of a world tour prior to starting judo, and he went around to find like different techniques from different martial arts. And quite a lot of the techniques he put into judo came from Cornish wrestling. And even when I was watching the demonstrations, I could see the similarities, like the judo techniques and what these guys were doing. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. And anyway, this coach guy who was like shorter than me, but he was like really broad. He was like, "Do you fancy a go?" And without even hesitation, I was like, "Hell yeah, yeah, I want to get on that mat." He was like, "Okay, cool." It's like, "I'll grab your jacket." So I got rid of my shoes, bracelets, everything like that. Got into this jacket, and he called over this training partner who was this giant of a guy. I mean, I was taller than him, but he was like broader than this head coach and top heavy, muscular, and I looked at him and it's like, my God, it's like if he wanted to, he could just crush me in a bear hug. But he was like really, really friendly, and he was like, okay, let's go on the mat, and yeah, just a friendly guy, and he was like, oh, have you done martial arts before? And I said what I'd done, and he was like, okay, so that's cool. And he said, do you know how to break fall? Which I do. From the past. I was like, yeah, it's fine. And what I didn't tell this guy though, which in hindsight, I wish I did actually, I was like, feel free to just chuck me over this mat, because yeah, as soon as I know where I'm going, I'll know how to recover, and I'll know which break fall to use and what have you. So I was like, please don't feel afraid about like injuring me. I'm glad actually in many ways I didn't say that, because that could have gone the other way. But no, this guy, he showed me about 3 or 4 different techniques, which I feel were enough. I didn't want to learn too many, because if you're trying to learn new techniques from a new martial arts, people want to bombard you with all these techniques. And I feel the more techniques they try and teach you with the best of intent, it goes in one ear and it goes out the other. And you end up going away thinking like, actually, I don't even remember most of those. So I feel sometimes when you're trying to teach new things to people, teach like 2 or 3, maybe 4 techniques, and just keep it at that, because they'll go away remembering that. They'll go away remembering 100% of what you taught them. So first technique, yeah, it was a basic throw. We got into these, like I said, these jackets, which are very unique to Cornish wrestling. Held on to jackets, and he did like a hip throw. He stood in front of me, put his hips against mine, and kind of heaved me over his shoulder. Very reminiscent of judo. So I gave it a go, and he was like, yeah, it was like, well done. That was pretty impressive. The second one was like a leg technique where you kind of like hook your legs underneath each other and you're bouncing up and down, and then you kind of trip somebody that way. That was a nice one. Then it was a counter to that, which I learned, where you got the legs up like that and they're still bouncing. Then you just put your foot down and sweep the other leg out from underneath them. And the final one was like a counter. If somebody's trying to throw me, then I sink my weight down and literally just grab around their waist and kind of just almost supine them back over my shoulder. And this guy, it feels quite unnatural to begin with, but this guy says, gravity will work for you. It's like all you need to worry about really is just squatting down as low as you can go. You grab around your opponent, you squat down, and when you feel your balance naturally going, that's the cue for you to just literally throw them back. And he said, yeah, gravity will literally just throw them over. And I did it on this guy, bearing in mind this guy was probably about, I don't know, I wouldn't say twice as heavy as me, but if I went strength for strength with him, I wouldn't have moved him at all. So I just used this technique he suggested, threw him right over, and he was actually, he said afterwards, he was like, for somebody coming from stand-up styles, he's like, you seem to have got like the physics and the body alignment, the body weight concepts almost to a T. So it was like, and yeah, he said he was really impressed, and I got talking to him like a little bit at the end, and they were all like, yeah, actually, so feel free to come along to some of our lessons. And things with Cornish wrestling is that it's not many people do it. It used to be done like pretty much by everybody in Cornwall back in the day, like Middle Ages and what have you, going forward in history. But in recent days, I think they said there's only 2 schools of Cornish wrestling in Cornwall. One in St Austell and one in a place called St Columb. They're the only 2 now, and I did check out their social media. I did check out their YouTube, and I think it's quite sad actually, because a lot of the lessons I've seen, they don't seem to have that many people there. The people they do have there seem to be really enthusiastic, and it's a nice range of like young kids to older people, and I feel that's like really nice. And again, like with Tai Chi, there's no egos. What I felt at all. If anything, I actually found that the Cornish wrestling people kind of quirky, but in a nice kind of way, a nice quirkiness, which I think matches my quirkiness. But I just felt it was a little bit of a shame that not more people were actively engaged with this, because I said to the guys as well, look, you know, I'm very much a history buff and I like history and I like to learn from history. And they said they're exactly the same. And one of the reasons why they do the Cornish wrestling is to help keep part of Cornish culture alive. And they did say that if they felt they stopped doing the Cornish wrestling, because there's only 2 schools now in Cornwall who do Cornish wrestling, part of that Cornish culture would die, which is a bit of a shame, to be honest. And that kind of leads me on to the second part of the live stream, which was going to be talking about my health recovery. So we've talked about the martial arts, where we are at the moment. And that Cornish wrestling event actually was the first event which I have done as part of the resurrected Stenning Taekwondo Club, which I should have mentioned earlier actually as well, but I didn't. When I first, well, not when I first started doing Taekwondo, but one of the main clubs or schools that I learned Taekwondo from was a place or a school called Stenning Taekwondo Club back in Sussex. Stenning is a town in Sussex, and that's where the school was based for the most part. That school closed in 2006, March 2006. I was at the final lesson, which was meant to be a self-defense seminar. Only 3 people turned up, myself included, the instructor included, and the instructor's son included. So it was a real bummer way to end the school. But there are various reasons why that school ended. Topic for another time. But the school closed, and that was the end of Stenning Taekwondo Club. When I moved to the West Country, I looked back on Stenning Taekwondo Club, and bearing in mind what I said earlier about I didn't want to do Taekwondo anymore, I didn't want to get involved in martial arts. But part of me, that part was like, no, you still got this in your blood. Part of me looked at Stenning Taekwondo Club and thought, you know what? It's 20 years ago that school closed. Maybe it's time to bring it back. Maybe I should bring it back, but maybe I should, just as like a 20th anniversary legacy nostalgia, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like, I don't know. Let's go back 20 years and just bring something back just for the sake of like legacy or nostalgia, because legacy is 20 odd years anyway. And let's just do a few like one-off occasions and then call it quits. And you know, you see musical artists do that, don't you? You get these, I don't know, Boyzone or Spice Girls, and they split up. A few years down the line, they get together again for like a 10-year anniversary tour, and they split up again. And I thought the same could be done with Stenning Taekwondo Club. And at the end of the day, I remember the instructor at Stenning Taekwondo Club, he did actually make noises that he wanted me to take over at one point. Before then, he changed his mind and he had other ideas. So I thought, you know what, I feel as though I've pretty much earned that. I was the only student, and I suppose this is a bit of ego coming through as well, to be completely honest, but I was the only student for that club to continue training for so many years after Stenning Taekwondo Club ended. I was the only student to continue competing. If anything, I've competed in over 100 competitions. None of the other students at Stenning Taekwondo Club, in any of the years it was open, did that. I'm the only student of Stenning Taekwondo Club who's competed in a world championship. No other student from Stenning Taekwondo Club has done that. Only me. And that as well, I've recently, earlier this year, actually became a 4th Dan as well. So I said, I feel as though if anybody is going to bring back Stenning Taekwondo Club, I have a very good claim to do that. So I did. And this Cornish wrestling event was actually the first martial arts related event Stenning Taekwondo Club had done in 20 years. And it was nothing to do with Taekwondo. It was Cornish wrestling. Moving forwards, next month in May, there is a competition in Plymouth. And that's run by a Taekwondo club, Taekwondo come kickboxing. But that event is going to be a point sparring Taekwondo / kickboxing event. Stenning Taekwondo Club is going to be there as well. The real Stenning Taekwondo Club, my Stenning Taekwondo Club. Yeah, we're going to be there. So that's in May. So that is my martial arts stuff done and dusted. So going on to the next part of the live stream is actually about the health update as well, because I have touched on this, but I've not actually gone into details, which I will now. And it does relate to Devon and Cornwall as well. Bear with me. It's cold. It's still cold. Oh, actually, that wasn't too nice in the throat. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I don't think I'll force myself to drink that. And that, oh, before I forget, that is my certificate. There you go. Awarded to me for participation in Cornish wrestling. I'm very proud of that. I had such a good time. Okay, so going to a little bit of, I suppose, a darkness is the only way to describe it, of health update. Now, I know some subscribers well, I didn't say want to or wanted me to talk about like the health update. But when I put the option out there, what should we talk about? This got a bit of attention. So it's not a physical health update, it's a mental health update. I have, since I moved, being completely honest, I have struggled and I have found it incredibly challenging to adjust. I have found it incredibly hard to find myself and settle. And that kind of comes into what I said earlier at the beginning about the martial arts. Part of me wanted to leave for martial arts back in Sussex. Prior to leaving Sussex, I was eager to get out of Sussex. I'd lived in Sussex for like 15 odd years. I had come to the end of it. There was nothing new for me in Sussex or Brighton. There was nothing for me left in that place. Especially since the COVID years, 2020, like I said, that's when I made this channel to help deal with the mental health issues I was going through at that time. Largely, they were very systemic. Largely, my mental health issues came from COVID. I had depression and anxiety before then and PTSD, but the COVID years really kind of like pushed all those to the forefront of my life. And I've been consciously aware of it. So 2020, I feel as though that should have been the year which I should have left Sussex, but I didn't. I held on to Sussex for another 5 years. And during that time, I felt my condition was getting worse. I felt very disassociated from people. I felt very angry about a lot of things. A lot of things were beyond my control, and I shouldn't have been angry about at all in hindsight. But at the time, that didn't make it any better. And I tried. I really tried looking at myself and saying, okay, Sam, we need to talk with yourself, and you. What's going on, and what can we do to help? But nothing could. Nothing could. I got to the stage of all the friends when I went to live in Sussex originally. I was 20 years old, and I'd moved into this shitty little flat with some people who were my flatmates, and they were my close friends at one stage. By the time I'd left Sussex, I was not speaking to anybody. You know, I didn't want to speak to anybody. These people who had once been my friends were just now people who I used to know. And I wanted to just get out. It's like, you know, I'm done. I don't feel any relatability or kinship to Sussex. So started looking further afield, and I said to myself, you know what, I just want to get as far away as possible. So I looked down the West Country way, found a place, moved. I believed, rightly or wrongly, that moving away would be better. I believed just getting away, getting a fresh start, going to a place where nobody knows me and I don't know anybody, and starting again would be the best thing. Literally within like a couple of days of moving down to the West Country, I said to myself, I absolutely hated the West Country. And not only did I say that, but I genuinely felt it. And there's a difference between thinking something and feeling something. And I felt, in a phrase, absolute contempt for West Country life. Everything which I was feeling in Sussex had just come with me. And I remember looking at it and thinking, like, why am I feeling like this? This should be a fresh start. This should be the beginning of something new. I can create something now. So why do I feel such dissonance and discord inside of myself? And it took all of the self-reflection techniques that I know to basically analyze myself and almost dissect myself emotionally and psychologically to find out why I was feeling like this. I didn't care when I first moved down. I didn't care about the culture of where I am. I genuinely didn't. I didn't care about the history. I had people coming up and trying to talk to me in the street, and they were being nice, and I remember just not being interested. I just wanted to get away from them. I felt such contempt for everything and everyone, and I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to socialize. I didn't want to contribute. And I felt like this for a very long time. I became very argumentative with people at work. I'm kind of surprised I wasn't fired on a number of occasions. I became almost like the worst side of myself. And in self-reflection, again, looking back at the past, the only other time I'd ever felt even slightly like this was when I lived in India. And what I was feeling in India was like intense sadness because I felt just so alone. And I recognized actually what I was feeling moving to West Country was exactly the same. These feelings, I went to India like 20 odd years ago when Stenning Taekwondo Club, the first one, shut down. I even went to India. But those feelings from 20 years ago, which I thought were dead and buried and part of my history, were still there. They'd come back. And that's very psychodynamic. What happened to you in your adolescence and your younger years comes back to haunt you in your adulthood. So that's what happened. It was very Freudian. But the scary thing was is that I felt the feelings that I was feeling when I moved to West Country were very much that. They weren't fake. They weren't put on. They weren't for show or superficial. They were genuine feelings of absolute hatred. And I don't take any pride in saying this. And I've been down here now coming on 5 months, and it's only just taken me now to actually kind of talk about it and talk online about it. Because before it was something I just kept inside myself, and I felt myself being like a kettle, boiling away at the inside and pretending on the outside that everything was okay. And really inside, I was like screaming and hurting, emotionally hurting. I felt lonely. I felt disgust at the people and the things around me. I had no interest in engaging, like I said. And I also felt really bad about myself for feeling that, because part of me is like, I shouldn't be feeling this. I've come here to get away from these feelings, and I've just basically jumped deeper into these feelings. So I felt disgust at myself because I felt as though I'd failed. And I also felt disgust at myself for feeling like this, for allowing myself to feel like this. And in the moment, everybody's feelings are valid. Behaviors are not valid, but feelings are. How one feels is very, very real to somebody. But despite that, I still felt shit about myself and about other things. And that's kind of ironic, because I feel that despite feeling like that, and even now after 5 months, I don't see Devon and the West Country as home. I've come to admit to myself that it will never be home. And it's odd because, like I said, when I went to this Tai Chi over weekends, that was me trying to integrate. Part of me was like, you cannot be so antisocial. You cannot just stay in your house all day long. You have to go out for your own mental health and do something. You've got to help yourself. We've been there before in the past, dude. We've been there where we've had real bad mental health. We've been there where in India I felt suicidal. I was going to kill myself in India. No bullshit. And we've been there in Sussex, where you have felt so bad, where you felt as though every day was Groundhog Day. You had no pleasure. You had there's a word for it. There's a condition, anhedonia, where you just lose all pleasure in life, and that's basically what I felt in Sussex and India. And I said, you're starting to feel this way here in the West Country. We need to do something. Don't go down that route again, because it would destroy you. So going to the Tai Chi was partly to try and get out of that system and to help my own mental health. Going to this Trevervik Day to do his Cornish wrestling, again, was trying to help get out of that cycle and to experience new experiences. Because when you have a new experience, you get a new thought. And with new thoughts, you can change. You're not going to change if you keep having the same thoughts and same feelings day in, day out. For change to happen, you have to have new experiences. You have to feel something new and different in order for a change to happen. That's how change comes around. So I started, well, I'm going to start as well learning Cornish. Just for the sake of it, I want to start cooking Cornish food beyond a fucking pasty. Stargazy pie. I've wanted to cook stargazy pie for ages. It's a really weird Cornish dish with fish poking their heads out of it. I want to do that. And I said to myself, look, I feel as though I am making progress. That way, I'm becoming a lot less belligerent. I'm starting to gradually lower my guard to a degree. It will never completely be lowered. And I feel that's just part of any trauma survivor knows that guard is never going to completely 100% go away, but it can come down enough to allow in happiness. And that's what I'm very much aiming for. So I have started like being a lot more sociable with people in my local area, and I have started to kind of go for these drives. And like I said, with my personal fitness, I drive to Bodmin Moor, and I go for runs to this old Celtic stone circle called the Hurlers. And beyond that, I go to that you may have seen it in my shorts, that giant pool surrounded by the cliffs, that quarry place, or that pool. I really like it there. I think the scenery is amazing, and whether I've run up there when it's rainy, I've run up there when it's sunny, and both times it's actually really nice. It doesn't matter about the weather; it's just a really nice place to go. And when I get there and I finish my run, I do, like I said, I start doing some of the Tai Chi now there as well. But I do sit down on the rocks and I do look around and go, you know what, this is actually quite a beautiful place. So I'm allowing myself to actually concede and say, don't look at this environment so much as enemy hostile territory. Start looking at it as friendly territory. And this is gradually what I've started to do for the sake of my mental health. Because the last few months, the whole of last year, and actually since, if I'm going to be very, very, very blunt and honest, I'd say perhaps from 2020, life has been hard. It's been very hard. But making these changes, doing these things, taking part in these local community events, doing stuff that I wouldn't normally do. That's all hopefully helping. And where am I now, mental health wise, to 5 months ago? I'm better. Not perfect, but maybe that's been my problem. I've always tried to be the best that I can be at anything. I've tried to be perfect. I've tried to make things perfect. I you know, there's a scratch on something, I get really upset. So it's not perfect. Maybe that's my flaw and my fallacy. I don't, instead of aiming for perfection, maybe I should just aim for progress. It's going to be a long road. It really is. And it's going to have setbacks. But acknowledging that beforehand and acknowledging that it's going to be hard means that when those hardships do arrive, it's not going to be as scary, because I would have been aware that there'd be those scary setbacks and those scary challenges. But forewarned is forearmed. And maybe before I get to those stages, then I can start thinking about what kind of strategies and interventions I can put in place to help myself better overcome them when I do reach them. So that's insightful, and that's going to involve a lot of introspection and a lot of, I'd say, self-reflection and a lot of meditation on my part to come to terms with that and to acknowledge it and to endure and overcome. Take one step at a time. If you want to get to the top floor of a building, you don't jump up the stairs, you take one step at a time. Anyway, guys, that is where we're at, martial arts training wise and health update. Thank you for listening. Thank you to enduring my really, really grainy voice and lurid accent. But next live stream, we'll do something like fun. I don't know, we'll have some music playing. I'll get out some wacky board games. We'll play card games. We could do Uno over the webcam. Play Uno. Actually, that's not such a bad idea. Yeah, I like that idea. I even amaze myself sometimes. Anyway, guys, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Stay safe, train hard, and keep listening to Pantera because they're the best band around. And I'll see you on the next live stream. Bye-bye.